January 27th, 1820. Russians discover Antarctica and are thrilled to discover an untapped source of cold bleakness. Welcome to The Revisionists. I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
And our guest tonight is one of Denver's favorite comedians. Please welcome Greg Ellis, everyone.
Thank you very much. How you doing?
Doing well, Greg. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. Never a chore.
I think Greg is a turning point. He is the first genuine non-American person to be on this podcast.
In full disclosure,
he's also the first genuine impersonator to be on this podcast.
Oh yeah, but I'm binational, so I got a bit of both, so I can come at it from both angles.
That is American, and I'm assuming Greek.
Yes, yeah. I'm John Papianakis, third cousin, twice removed.
John Baklavopoulos. Zach, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Same old. I think we might have covered that. But if you're new to the show, I lost the thread there for a second. But if you are new to this show, I should say this is a podcast wherein we take a look at history, the unfinished tome, as they call it, and I'm sure somebody has called it that. Yeah. I did.
Of averages,
now
someone must have called it that.
You know what? I called it that now. Yeah. And we go over a person or event from history. First, we tell, the version of events that the man wants you to think is true. And then we create a version of events that one man, specifically the person who wrote it, wants you to think is true. The Alex Jones of our podcast, if you will.
Oh, no.
And at the end, we decide which is the true history of this little blue marble going forward for the rest of time.
Every time you do the intro, you just keep adding a little more to it. And I love it.
It works because I forget what I added to it last time, so I have to... Previously on The Revisionists, we discussed Kaiser Wilhelm, who you may know as the Emperor of Austria-Germany during the First World War.
It's a great episode, that one.
Yeah, with
have you released
with
it?
guests.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you tipped your hand a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know how many
there,
of these
right?
you got in the can.
With guest Jacob Rupp, who put in, I
Great
would say,
guy,
one of the
guy,
most
Jacob
exhaustive.
Rupp. Wonderful guy.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Jacob Rupp, I would say,
haunting.
put in one of the most exhaustive efforts ever seen on this podcast. But ultimately, his alternate history, which was the real history, except one time Kaiser Wilhelm said shush to a person in a theater, did not win.
Well, he was like the first person to do that, I think.
Yeah,
That
and he
was
likes
like-
sequels.
Yeah, that's something like that. Because he was Kaiser Wilhelm II. Fuck off, Rob.
But that did not win. The true history of that shitty man won out in the end. And this week, I think we're discussing none other than Phillipe Petain.
Very well pronounced,
Yeah,
I think.
a name that trips off everyone's tongue. No doubt.
Yep, like so much melting brie dripping from the tongues of.
If I recall correctly, let's see. I lost my train of thought immediately. I remember what okay. I remember
Leave
what
that
quite
in.
at the
Leave
show.
that in. Leave it in. Leave it in.
Yeah, verisimilitude.
I was going to make a joke about Petain, but I can't remember what it was. So I'm just going to move on.
Okay.
I think, if I have it correctly, Brian has the alternate history, correct?
Yes, indeed.
And that means, Greg, you have brought the actual.
Yeah, all 27 pages of it from Wikipedia.
Wow.
It's
Exhaustive.
not going to be funny, but it's going to be fact-driven, guys.
Yes. We're turning officially into Dan Carlin's hardcore history for this one episode only.
Awesome.
So I guess if we have that much to go through, to dig through, perhaps we should just get on started, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, let's do
no
it.
problem. And chime in when you see fit, because, like I said, I printed this off the day. It's 16 pages, but I printed it off after I said, yeah, I'll do the real one. I could have just made any old bullshit up and a couple of limericks stuck together. There you go. Petain.
I am usually...
You could have rupped it.
Shush.
I am usually like so glad to get the actual history because I feel way more stressed out doing the alternate. But this was the one time I was like, oh, fucking thank God. Oh, Jesus.
Well, it's quite interesting. I mean, I didn't know anything about him. Surprised, I've got a history A level and I've got a GCSE in French, so
now
perfectly equipped.
For Americans, what is the equivalent of an A level in history?
You get the GCSE when you're 16 and the A level at 18, and you take 3 A levels or 4, and that the points accumulation from that gets you into the college or university of choice. So GCSE, then A level. I think they've changed it now because I'm so fucking old.
It's some sorting hat thing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. So not only is it not applicable to most of our listeners, it's also outdated.
We're going international on this one. It's fine. It's a fucking history podcast. How can it be outdated?
Thank you. I had water in my mouth and I couldn't say it.
Remember A levels? Oh, A levels. Okay. Henri Philippe Benoni Omer Joseph Petain, or Philly Six Names as he was known amongst his friends, was born in 1856. And
I think my pronunciation was a little better, but
yes, yeah. I think you went with the more sort of Montreal Quebecois style, the kind of Jacques
It's
Villeneuve.
Spanish kind of. Yeah.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Line number 2. This is going to be a long podcast. Strap yourselves in, guys. He became the oldest French chief of state at the age of 84 in 1940. We'll get onto that in a bit. But his story really starts just before World War One, and I've drawn a massive parallel with his life and the career path of Jared Fogle from the subway.
Oh, so
it's an interesting analogy to draw.
Knowing how both of their paths end up, I find your choice of the word career very interesting.
Well, needs must. But so 58 years old. He's 1914. It's before the war. He was a colonel in the French army. Nothing much going on in peacetime, so he could never really make the role of general. He got one eye on retirement at this point, maybe retired to Provence, buy a little gîte, little country house, trip to the Pyrenees, that kind of thing, play boule. And all of a sudden, World War One just started out of nowhere.
Just one day.
Just started one day. You may have covered that last week. But so in World War One starts, and he's a colonel. All of a sudden, he's thrust into the centre of the French army. And so he's gone from chubby unknown Jared Fogle at this point to now where he's really building a career for himself, which is the Jared that loses, £200 by walking and eating BMT sandwiches, right?
Yeah, something like that.
In this metaphor, the copious Subway sandwiches he eats are needlessly complex treaties between nations.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. With pepper jack.
Just Chipotle mayo. That's how you signed a treaty back in the day.
So, he's a colonel in spring 1914. War starts. 29th of August 1915, he gets promoted to brigadier. Then he gets promoted again to the 33rd Corps leader in October the same year. Spring 1915 in the Artois Offensive, which is a scene that you'll see outside any pub on a Saturday night in England. There's people pissed up on Stellas. He's promoted again. July 15, Commander-in-Chief of the Second Army. Autumn 1915 at the Champagne Offensive, which is a sight you'll see outside any exclusive nightclub on a Saturday night in England. People tanked up on Moët and
they're all
Chandon.
World War I reenactors.
And then his big coup de grace, or whatever the word for that is in French. The Battle of Verdun, right? Now, he won that won the title of the Battle of Verdun. That was what he was known as because of the way that he commanded his army. He was a big fan of laser-guided tactics rather than brute force. And what he did against the Germans in February 1916 got himself a promotion during the middle of the battle because he was so fucking good. He basically sent his troops in and then kept pulling them out and topping them up, pulling them out and topping them up, never more than a week or two on the front line. And the Germans would just keep them there. They get some killed, they'd die of trench foot, and they'd throw some more in. So he won that battle and then became the Lion of Verdun. So his career star now is he's doing 200 or 300 commercials a year playing on local radio.
Yeah, he's playing Las Vegas at this point.
So
Yeah.
But
just as Jared got the nickname the Lion of whatever that shitty bread is they have at
the
Subway.
Lion of cold cuts.
Yeah.
The Lion of honey oats.
The Lion of that soggy salad stuff they put on your sandwich.
Oh my God, do not eat at Subway.
No, it's fine. It's all right.
No,
It's as good as anywhere else.
This podcast is sponsored by Subway.
Oh no.
It's $5. What the fuck do you want? At Subway. Eat fresh.
I mean, they named their chain after a place that's famous for being full of rats and shit, so I don't know what they expected.
But so did Arby's come after that? With Taco Bell? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, they actually named places full of rats and shit Arby's after the restaurant.
It's the classic saying, which came first, the rat shit or the Arby's? Everybody knows it.
So back to the story. I got a lot to get through, guys.
All right.
So despite him being the Lion of Verdun, someone got promoted over him to the army commander-in-chief, a guy called Robert Nivelle. Because it's that kind of thing, if you're really good at your job at work, human resources don't want to promote you because they'll never be able to successfully backfill your position.
Relatability.
Yeah. It's,
I work in a Subway.
You can enmesh yourself too directly in jobs. It's just, be shit and get promoted out of it. It's good.
I do have to say, on our minisodes, someone was saying they trusted us to pronounce things correctly, and I think just hearing Greg actually pronounce things correctly, they're probably the wool is lifted from my eyes.
There's nothing better for a Frenchman's ears than the sound of an Englishman pretending to speak French. And I actually watched a little documentary about this, and it was an American guy based out of a studio in Stockholm, I found. Who's doing these little World War I things, and he pronounced it in different ways as well. So I don't think there is a hard and fast rule. You'd have to ask.
And he's
Petain
dead.
himself.
So
and he's dead. Exactly. Fuck him. Him and Adolf Hitler. So this Nivelle, right? Back to the story. Right, Nivelle, he fucked up a battle in the Chemin des Dames, which means the Lady Path Offensive. The Lady Path Offensive in April 1917. He threw troops in. The troops were completely outnumbered, outranked, outflanked, and it forced a huge full-scale mutiny of the French army. So they brought Petain in to become commander-in-chief, and he basically stopped the mutiny by 3,400 court-martials, 554 death sentences, but he commuted 90%. So he's all right because only about 55 got shot or guillotined. So that's where we're up to now.
For the French, is a very low number of guillotines.
Yes, it is. And I don't know whether they've still got them, whether they keep them like the Cubans do with the cars. The old 1950s.
I'm sure they were using it up until the 70s, so I'm sure there are a few hanging around.
we can. I got my mate Benoit. I can give him a call if you want. He might be able to sell them off.
Yeah, he has one collecting dust in his garage,
like the French.
He keeps saying he's going to fix it up with his dad. Yeah. They just never get around to it
and get it re-chromed.
Yeah, put spinners on it.
So yeah, that's the first bit. So now he's really popping. He's really riding high, and I thought I was far ahead then, but I turned 2 pages. So the end of the war comes, and despite a few other things, he's pretty good at this point. He had a couple of issues in one battle.
The Larry David rank, of course.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Comme si, comme ça, bon. I guess, or whatever the...
Now I just want to see a French translation of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I don't know what the word for curb might be. Curb votre enthusiasm.
Sorry. Keep going.
La rue David. Okay, so yeah, let's skip that. So we're at the end of the First World War. He's made the Marshal of France. There's a guy called Foch, but we can skip him. And so now it's between the wars, and he was 58 in 1914, so he's knocking into his mid-60s now. This is an interesting thing. He was a bachelor, a womanizer. So he's in his like mid-60s now, and he was known apparently for his piercing blue eyes. He was known as l'homme avec les yeux bleus. By nobody on the Champs-Elysees. But he had many, many mistresses, sometimes known as Peitains de Petain, I think is the translation to it.
I want to say, if people want a visualization of this guy, he looks kind of like Robert Duvall with a fancy mustache.
That's exactly right.
He looks a bit like, Pringle from the Pringles, but old.
Yeah.
He got a big grey mustache.
Is that his name?
His name is just Pringle.
From the tube of Pringles,
Yeah, they're named after him. He invented them.
I think he'll thank you to call him Mr. Pringle. Or maybe Mr. Pringle was his father. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
Mr. Pringle lives in Florida. Call me sour cream and onion.
So he's known as a womanizer. He's riding now. He's like the Daddy Mac of Paris. So he's like
he wore all his clothes backwards.
Was that crisscross you're talking about?
Yeah. One of his war strategies was to make everyone jump.
It's a bold tactic. So yeah, he's an elder statesman, a bit like a James Bond figure, and he married. You can forget Pussy Galore, right? Forget Pussy Galore. He married a woman, an old mistress, very beautiful woman called Eugenie Hardon.
Wow.
You didn't see that one in Wikipedia, did you?
I
do.
Eugenie Hardon.
At this point in the Wikipedia, my eyes are glazed over. So
It's terrible. Yeah.
I blame Ian Fleming for missing that one.
Mademoiselle Hardon, have you ever been to the top of the Eiffel Tower?
It's too on the nose. Sorry, that was oof.
Who was that? Oof. Eggs.
Was-
That's French
That
for
was
eggs.
that was like Sean Connery with a bad cold, but he's eating mashed potatoes.
Yeah, if you got like mumps or
Yeah.
So, but he's knocking around during the war. He's married now. He's shacked up with Eugenie Ardon, and
Boy,
doesn't want to get back into politics. He runs for president November 19, doesn't get elected, knocks around a bit, becomes the Minister of War in 1930 wars, terrible French cutbacks within the military. So he finds himself in 1939, the onset of World War II. The French don't have a bomber that can actually get to Berlin and back. On one tank of gas, I guess as you call it here.
Yeah.
And I had a Citroen ZX once, which is pretty similar. So French engineering couldn't get me from like Wolverhampton to Birmingham without like
Also,
refilling the
strangely,
radiator.
full of bombs, it turns out.
Yes, yeah, well, yeah. The area where I grew up was like very heavily bombed during the Blitz, so it was. Yeah. But not by the French, obviously, because they couldn't even get to Berlin, let alone Coventry.
Presumably other reasons.
What is the English equivalent? Is it like a caddy sham of petrol, or what exactly?
A what? A caddyshack.
I mean, it just sounded right.
It's a cup. We use a cup of petrol, and we pour it into the car with our pinky finger raised with a little saucer underneath to catch the drips.
And then you put a cube of sugar in the gas tank.
Exactly, but it depends whether you like or hate the person. Right, we're paying attention. Right, World War II. So in 1939, he's the French ambassador of Spain. So that's a pretty fucking cool gig. He can, pop over to Madrid, Barcelona, do a bit of diplomacy, get some like jamon iberico, some chorizo. It's a bit of a sweet
Incorporating
deal.
a third language in here.
Well, I guess if you stick near the border, you're like Basque. It's kind of ish in the middle. It's
Yeah,
kind
we
of
got Catalan. Strap in, folks. This is going to be a linguistic ride, baby.
And then he has his Danny Glover moment where he's offered to join the Parliament again, and he's like, "No, I don't want to." And then France gets invaded. And so he says, I'll step up to the plate. I know my country needs me. And he's back in the seat. It's his last day on the job. He's just about to retire. And then, come on, we need you back, Philip. Come on.
Yeah.
So he decides to take the job after France is almost completely functionally defeated in the war.
Yeah, it's kind of... it's a bit like that, I was fucked before I got here. Come on. Can't blame me. But yeah, they basically hadn't put any money in the French armed forces for about 15 years. They were still using tactics and weaponry that they'd used in 1918. Mm-hmm. And now we're 20 years or so ahead. So he takes his place in Parliament. They're actually actively now moving the Parliament around France to try and keep it safe, I assume. And they moved it to Bordeaux, so at least they could have a drink of wine at the same time while they're making rules. And at this point, they're trying to negotiate an armistice with the Germans, a sort of a treaty whereby Germans can take some land and they can remain in some part of it. So that's effectively what happens.
And just because I don't think we explicitly said it, this is around 1940 during World War II, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't have that on my notes. I think I fell asleep halfway through that. Like many people listening to this podcast right now.
I think most of our listeners got it from context clues, but there's a couple real fucking dummies out there.
Pay attention, guys. Come on. So he is... Churchill's like, okay, all right, let's have an armistice. And so this is quite an interesting thing. It's an example of reverse Brexit. Churchill and the British government offer nationality to Frenchmen as British, if they want it. They can have joint nationality so they can join the British Army under the Franco-British Union. But no one likes that in France because then they become subservient to the British. So the president resigns, prime minister resigns, and then Petain is instilled as the prime minister of France. And at this point, he's Jared at his thinnest.
Okay.
He's like the I used to be fat, but now I'm all that episode of Ricky Lake.
It's like, Mr. Prime Minister, what are you talking about?
Yeah. This is, you may remember when America had Jared fever that one summer.
Yeah, I keep trying to touch myself. It's very hot. So they basically sign an armistice with Germany, 22nd of June, 1939, I think. And it's basically like a separating couple who take ownership of half the DVDs. Germany gets control over the north and west of the country, like their house, and Paris takes the Atlantic coastline. They're left with 2/5 of pre-war territory. So they're squished down into the bottom. And this is where it becomes interesting. They move the parliament, the government, to Clermont on the 29th of June. And then on the 1st of July, they move it to Vichy because Clermont is too small to poke it.
It's the most French thing I've heard in such a long time.
I'm checking out of this fucking Marriott. And I'm going to the Holiday Inn Express down the street. And this is the beginning of what they call Vichy France. This is... where the absolute shitbag behaviour, or sac de merde, as it's probably known, behaviour of Petain just sort of rules the roost. It's a horrible... This is like... There's not much humour in this, because it's basically like reading off a list of someone being an absolute shitbag. So...
I want to say, the symbol of Vichy France is if Donald Trump came up with a new symbol for America, except he would get rid of the French. But otherwise, it's exactly what it would look like. It's an axe with red, white, and blue on the two blades, and then stars on the handle.
Oh, God. Just fascistic, but also terribly designed.
Yeah.
Yeah, uber patriotic in a way that's cloying. Yeah, like a country singer kind of patriotic.
Oh, God. Oh, no. That looks like it was made in MS Paint.
Oh, shit. I saw that, but I printed it out in black and white, so I'm just being shown a colour picture of the flag.
It looks like someone is selling, off-brand Captain America merchandise.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm more a Captain America on the offense.
Yeah, exactly.
Corporal USA.
New idolatry. Corporate USA. Corporate USA.
Corporate USA is the true power
That's
behind
what we
the
got
throne.
right now.
So, back to the story. This Petain, now he assumes the head of state position. So, near absolute powers. And I'll list, like, here's a bunch of the shitbag things he does. He blamed the Third Republic, was what they replaced for the French defeat. They got rid of the French motto, Liberté, Égalité, and Fraternité, and replaced it with Travail, Famille, and Patrie, which means work, family, and fatherland. Presumably because Arbeit macht frei was copyrighted by the Nazi Party at this point. But yeah, what did he do? New Constitutional Act. He abolished the presidency. He adjourned Parliament indefinitely. He could appoint and fire ministers and civil servants as he wished. He passed laws through a council of ministers. He chose his own successor. By 1941, he held all governing power in France. This is a man who in 1914, at the age of 58, was planning to retire for a nice quiet life in the country. And so basically, he has everything. There's nearly all of the legislative, executive...
Why retire in part of the country when you could own the entire country?
Or like whatever the Germans don't have, basically.
Yeah, that's
Why
true.
buy an apartment when you can buy the whole fucking block?
Yeah.
Or just take over it.
Yeah,
by
when you can
force.
say, this is my block now. I am the captain now.
Yeah. So he's basically this Louis XIV figure. And back to the ideas you were throwing around earlier, the Conservatives, they launched this concept of the National Revolution, which was a Catholic and authoritarian paternalist state, transition from the Republic to a state. And they basically had the motto where France was going to be a new France, a social hierarchy rejecting the false idea of the natural equality of men. So you can let that... And this is the stuff we found out later about Jared Fogle.
Yeah.
This is where it's like really blotting
If
his
you hadn't
copybook.
put that part of the analogy together, folks, guess what?
So yeah, and just more shitbag behaviour. Dismissed Republican civil servants, proclaimed anti-Semitic laws, imprisoned opponents, foreign refugees, imposed censorship. He made opinion a felony. I don't think I like that. Get in the fucking penitentiary. Collaborated with Germany, produced a legion of troops to fight in Russia. His government was recognised by the US and others until the Germans took the rest of France at some point. He never really said no to the Axis powers. He listened to Hitler in silence, it was remarked in 1940, but still shook his hand.
Yeah, that's a pretty good metaphor, actually, for how this whole thing unfolds.
Yeah, man, I'm never buying an American car. Goes and buys a Honda.
Yeah.
And so this basically a whole range of shit show behaviours. He instills this milice, a collaborative, like an armed militia to repress the French resistance. And then you can see it unravelling, and he calls out to a guy like Darnand, who was put in charge of this milice. He said, you should be a little bit less excessive with the milice. It's a bit, to which Darnand replied, you should have thought that before you told me to fucking do it.
Yeah.
At this point, then Germany invade and take the whole of France. The French government remains in existence, and they knock him out of France, and Petain is a figurehead at this point. And then in 7th of September 1944, they get liberated, and he gets pulled from across the Swiss border and back into France to face trial for treason.
Yeah. Imagine that happening.
Yeah.
That'd be...
And this is the bit that's a bit like when Jared went to trial. Very direct.
That's like a very
parallel.
one-to-one comparison.
So yeah, convicted of all charges, sentenced to death by one vote. Like, fuck you, Pierre. You could imagine him in the gallery. Oh, you're going down, Philippe. They commuted his sentence due to his age, and he was put in jail. And it's kind of thing, anything that I've said earlier that may be like inaccurately said or anachronistic doesn't matter, because they stripped him of all honours and military ranks that he ever owned. So fuck it. Doesn't matter. So he should have stayed in France. Should have stayed like in Pyrenees or something. After his death, this is interesting being a Brit. After his death, certain people tried to get him out of jail during his jail time. Queen Mary, who was the wife of the British King George V, she was the daughter of Prince Francis, Duke of Teck, also known as Count Francis von Hohenstein of Germany. George V, her husband, tried to get him out. He was the king of England at the time. He's the first cousin of Tsar Nicholas II. There's a good picture on Wikipedia of them dressed in German military uniform.
Oh, yeah.
Which hasn't happened with a member of the British royal family until Prince Harry a few years ago in Las Vegas. Yeah. And it's interesting. George V was the king that became the first monarch of the House of Windsor because the royal house of Britain was known as Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, and he had to change it because of anti-German sentiment. Right. So he wants him back out of jail for some reason. I've got no idea why.
We briefly talked about him in the last episode, I believe. That move greatly displeased Wilhelm at the time.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
Yeah, who made the worst clapback ever.
Worst.
But anyway.
We're near the end. I'm on page 66, all right? Okay. Harry S. Truman tried to get him out, offered him political asylum in the US. I don't know much about Harry S. Truman, but I don't know, as an American, might be able to...
His middle name was just S.
So it began with a J.
Yeah, technically it began with a J. Took me a second to get there, but yeah, I understand.
Yeah. And General Franco of Spain tried to get him out, but they couldn't get him out.
That one makes more sense to me.
Yeah, that one I get.
Yeah.
Well, he warned him not to go back into the French military at the beginning of the war. So,
Yeah, okay. So, still, the fascist thing is kind of more...
Told you so. Told you so, Philip. You come crawling.
Yeah, they're wingmen. They have to get each other's back.
So now, he's in prison. His health deteriorates. Memory lapses. Incontinence. Soiling himself in front of visitors. We've all done it, though. We've all done it. Yeah. Sometimes you forget where you are. No longer recognizes his wife, which is sad when...
Miss Hardon.
Mademoiselle Hardon doesn't quite do it for me anymore. And he would have fabled hallucinations where he was commanding a battle of naked women. Commanding a battle or... naked women were dancing around his room. Again, we've all been there.
And never the twain shall meet.
And he was basically too ill to walk, had heart problems, too ill to be moved to hospital, and he died on the 23rd of July 1951, aged 95. He had a good innings, didn't he? Had a really good innings. Buried in the Marine Cemetery. He's dead now, right? He's dead. He's been tried for treason. 1973... he makes his big comeback. Jarrett could do this. He could atone. He could come back.
Hopefully after his death, yes.
Yeah, after his death. So basically some extremists dug up his coffin and demanded to President Pompidou to have him buried in Donemont Cemetery with the war dead. Pompidou and his guys, they got the coffin back, stuck a wreath on top and put it back in the same fucking hole where it was.
I don't know. Go to the fucking dollar store, pick up a wreath, maybe a Corporate USA while you're at it.
Yeah, go down to the Frank store and get a wreath. Yeah.
So he still has he has a couple of places named after him in the Canadian Rockies. But I spoke to my friend Benoit when we were doing this. He's a French guy I know, and I asked him what's the general sentiment in France like towards Petain. Now, because I don't want to run. There's a lot of shit in here, but if he was, if I'm reading between the lines inaccurately, he basically said in 2013 or so, they renamed the last street that was ever named after him something else. Mm-hmm. And the only people that really talk about him now are the French National Front.
Okay.
For some
reason.
And that concludes Henri Philippe Benoni Omer Joseph Petain. Boom. What an arsehole.
Hey there, this is Brian reminding you that The Revisionist is supported by listeners just like you. You can make a pledge and get rewards like shirts and even the right to vote over at patreon.com/therevisionists.
Hello, everybody. I'm JD Lopez, the host of Left Hand Right Brain. It's a free-flowing, wide-ranging conversation that I have with artists doing interesting and creative things here in Denver and beyond. We talk about their personal stories, break down their creative process, and what motivates them. Spoiler alert, it's mostly spite. We talk about all these things and more while kicking back, cracking wise, and always having a good time. You can find old episodes and everything you need to know at lefthandrightbrainpod.com.
Again, that actual history was exhaustive. I think I really just...
That's one word for it.
We've been doing a pretty good job of providing, I think, somewhat in-depth actual histories in the last couple episodes.
Yeah, I know. It's like yours.
For once, you might actually learn something if you listen to this podcast.
I certainly did. 4 stars on the Apple Podcast app. 5 if it had less foreigners in it. Do the advert. Come on, Brian.
Oh, no. It's pre-recorded.
Oh, right. Shit. I thought you were going to read something out that book.
Oh, no.
Squarespace can save you money.
Yeah,
anyways.
of course.
Yeah,
Blue Apron.
We have a spokesperson. We got Jared Fogle for a song.
He was so cheap. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. It's amazing that they got an ISDN
I
line.
haven't checked Yahoo News front page in many years. So, like all Frenchmen, Phillipe Petain was part skunk. That will come into play later. Which, by the way, I could say a lot of this because I'm part French.
Oh, that makes it all right.
Yeah.
Fine.
He graduated military school with top honors after he did a school shooting, and that's how you did that.
Okay.
But I have just a huge list of his innovations during World War I. Because, like you said, when he he refreshed the troops a lot.
Yeah, he's a tactician.
Yeah.
Genius, man.
Like he thought if you frequently rotated troops out of the miles-long rat and shit-filled pit that had all their dead friends in it, they might be more effective in combat. He also believed that if you shot at the enemy a bunch, it would greatly reduce their effectiveness.
You got to use bullets, though.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, another one of his innovations was that he realized bullets are more effective than cloves of garlic, which is what the French army had been using.
Unless you're facing an army of vampires.
Vampire, of course.
Yeah.
Vampire. Yes.
What's the French word for vampires?
Vampire, I think, might be German, but
okay.
Or Old English. But we all know that France borders Transylvania, so there is a reason.
It's true.
Yes, we all know that to be true.
That's why they have all those running rivers between them and Transylvania. Some vampire deep cut.
Yeah, that's why there's so many rice fields where you just...
Yes, exactly.
Blow
the silos, the vampires are coming.
Other innovations... To get French soldiers to pursue the enemy, all you have to do is dump white paint on their back, and they go nuts for it, which goes back to the skunk thing.
Oh, is it like forcing yourself underneath a recently painted white pole, like with a black shirt on? Yeah. It's a gold tactic, yeah.
It's like sexually assaulting a cat.
Yeah.
And we're back to Subway.
It's a metaphor that Brian is.
Thanks, cartoons.
It's just the analogy that keeps on giving.
He knew just when to tap his swamp mana. I wrote a lot of these today. He figured out bayonets were much more effective if you pointed them toward the enemy and not towards your own spleen.
What's the French word for bayonet?
Le Royale with cheese.
Okay,
I think.
that's nice. Fucking metric system. Come on, Liberia, Myanmar. Team up.
He figured out tanks were more effective than horses. This was years after he figured out horses were more effective than teacup pigs, which is what the French army had been using prior to this.
Not on me.
Have you got a story to share about your teacup
if I were
pig
walking down the
experience?
street and I saw a horse, I wouldn't give a fuck. But if I saw a teacup pig, that's an event.
That's a good point, yeah.
I'm telling my girlfriend about that later that day.
Later that day. So that's not something you'll take a picture of and send her immediately. They'll be like, okay, 8 or 9 o'clock rolls around. And I remember it.
It's a surprise before bed. Guess what happened to me today?
To improve communication, he removed the standard ball gag from the French army uniform. And he, of course, came up with this famous French battle cry, where all the troops light a cigarette in unison and shout, "This will be deeply meaningless," before charging into battle.
In black and white.
Yes. Also, if they entrench underground rather than in a third floor flat in the 11th arrondissement, they're much harder to hit.
It's got a point. Amazing tactician.
Now I'm just kicking myself. When you were talking about constantly refreshing the troops, constantly rotating the troops, I'm just mad I didn't make a French New Wave joke at that point.
or French Revolution.
Yeah, French Revolution, that works too.
Damn it. He also figured out that shooting someone while being incredibly condescending hurts them more.
Emotionally as well.
Exactly. His secret shame his whole life, though, was that he never got the better of Jean Valjean. And so dumb. For all of his...
I don't even know Jean Valjean.
Les Miserables.
Les Miserables.
Okay, sorry. I
Read a book. I thought the British were supposed to be smart.
It's the Miserables, all right? It's the Miserables.
Someone stole bread and was rightly punished.
Sorry. I'm not into that. I thought Jean-Michel Jarre straight away.
Oh God, I'm not even going to do this.
No,
joke.
do it.
I have to. For all of his innovations, they offered him the position of General Obvious in the French army, but he didn't take it after because he thought it was bad luck because Lieutenant Commander Obvious had been shot after a mutiny, which frankly is an outcome he should have seen coming. Anyway, God damn it.
Boom.
You all asked for it. You're here. You're listening to this. Why am I punishing you?
I mean,
think
they
punished
were
them
listening to it 30 seconds ago. And now they're doing something else.
Yeah, if they got this far.
Now there's wailing and gnashing of teeth.
You got to put toilet breaks in my bit when you edit it.
Oh, I'm just cutting that piece out. That's going to be another fucking Squarespace ad.
We wish we could get Squarespace.
I mean, I could just start doing Squarespace ads and billing them. I don't know if they'll notice. Between World Wars, he championed more innovations. He added a ceiling and, more importantly, a floor to warplanes. He developed the Maginot Line, which was an improvement on the previous defense, which was a slick line of butter running along the German and Belgian border. And he decided that it was no longer required to have syphilis in order to join the French army.
That's
that just expanded their recruiting pool.
Oh, you got all that money then to not spend on antibiotics.
Exactly. And of course, he worried that his collaboration with Nazis would tarnish his innovations, which is not the thing to worry about when you're dealing with Nazis.
Yeah, and Volkswagen are doing all right, aren't they?
Yeah, that's true.
IBM, come on.
IBM, the Catholic Church. Anyway, and that's some more information in the story of Phillipe Petain, Lion of Verdun.
Certainly more humor in that bit than the factual.
Let's not throw the H word around.
Apart from marrying a woman called Mrs. Hardon, that was.
Which I mean, God damn it, I can't believe I missed that. Before we move on to judgment, listeners, just want to mention that The Revisionist is a proud member of the Denver Podcast Network, and you can find all the shows on that network at denverpodcast.net. And we also ask that if you are so inclined, that you write a review of this podcast on iTunes, which is super helpful to us. And of course, you can contact us via our website, revisionistpodcast.com, or on any social media. So, Greg, real quick, you are going to be at E-Town Comedy in Boulder.
Yeah,
coming
February
up.
the 2nd, taking my musical set that I've got now to the streets, my stand-up. Got that. I've got some more stuff coming up this year with the18.com, which is a soccer website I do some presenting with. And got some other stuff working in the background, which I can't tell you about.
Oh, okay. He got very aggressive in the eyes when he said that.
No, I'm just passing the message on.
As for me, listeners, you could check out my social media feed for upcoming dates that I can't remember off the top of my head right now. So that's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook,
MySpace.
Jesus, I am falling the fuck apart.
You're fucking acing this self-promotion thing.
Jesus.
To pull it up. We'll wait. Pull it up now.
No, it's fine. It's fine. But Zach, I believe judgment falls to you this episode.
So here's the thing. I have a rule of thumb when it comes to episodes about people who collaborated with Nazis. And that rule of thumb is, I like the alternate history to make them look worse than they are. Brian's alternate history made the French look stupid, but this guy looked like the only smart Frenchman that ever lived.
Oh, that's not the...
So
to anyone listening, again, I don't even care about winning. Not the angle I was going for.
It's the taking part that counts.
Yeah.
So to save our sizable French listenership...
Well, my friend Benoit, bonjour Benoit, comment ça va mec? He'll be listening to this.
I do two things.
Ça va bien. Anyway.
I give my vote to the real history, but I offer the listeners the chance to strike that down with their own voting, which will also be a referendum on the intelligence of French people.
I've had enough of referenda recently.
Yeah. Okay, well, listeners, voting is now open as you're hearing this. So you can buy your right to vote on Patreon. But Greg, thank you for being here.
It was a pleasure. It was long. I'm sorry.
No,
it took so long. I hope you edit that down to about 30 seconds of zingers.
You know what? We've done longer.
Okay.
So that's totally fine. Zach, thank you as always.
Of course.
For everyone here at The Revisionists, I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
Have a good time.